I went on a little bit of a research mission. Went on a bloody deep dark hole, and
I don't want to know about that.
I asked a question to myself, and I said, how often or how rare is it that someone enters the GOAT conversation? Because the GOAT conversation, man, it lingers, and it's one of those things. Makes for a great chat from time to time, but it's one of those questions that you will never have an answer to. But I wasn't interested in who the GOAT was. I'm interested in, okay, how often does a player enter the conversation, right? Because 1 through 7 are locked. In today's, you ask most fans, 1 through 7 are locked. It's your 7 through 12 that really gets interesting, that people say, no, it's this person, no, it's this person. So what I did is I wanted to know, okay, how often does a player enter that conversation? Because one player's just entered it last year, Steph Curry. He's gone from top 20 player to top 9, 10, 11, depending on who you ask.
Top 10, surely.
Top 10, Steph Curry. So he's entered it, right? And it got me thinking, okay, so how often do people enter the top 10 argument? So I did a little bit of research, if you can call it that.
Number crunching.
And it's a hard question to answer, but I think I've got an answer.
Right.
So to answer the question, or try to, you've got to, it depends when the question was asked. So if you go to the 50s, when just after the NBA was after the merger, if you were to ask someone in the 50s, into the 50s, who the top 10 players of all time are, it would be quite a small pool of players, and you'd have names like Dolph Shays, Miken's probably
the guy.
number one.
Yeah.
Sharman, Johnson.
Kuzi? Surely Kuzi.
Yeah. The point is, not a lot to choose from. You would have to really struggle to fill the 10.
You're picking an all NBA team borderline.
Yeah.
Right.
So then you go to the 60s. And by the end of the 60s,
that team's transformed.
The whole top 10 is none of the guys from the 50s. You might keep Miken in there.
Miken's still in
you
there.
might keep Miken in there, but you got Wilt, Oscar, Jerry, Bill, Bellamy, Jones, Pettit. You've got so much more people in the 60s, so the list has changed. So within a 20-year time frame, you've gone from...
You've got 10 that are...
You've got the inception, and then after 20 years, someone joins the top 10 conversation every year. Pretty much, right? Yeah. So every year, someone joins the top 10. Then you go to the 30s. Then you go to the 70s. You got Kareem, Irving, Barry, Fraser, Hayes, Havlicek, Maravich. You've got these people who are the top 10 of the 70s. But what we've got so far, now we've got our list.
Cheers.
We've got Miken, we've got Wilt, Oscar, Bill. I'm just naming the best players from each decade so far. Kareem. Julius. Yep. And then you can make up your other 6. So slowly but surely as the years go on, the number of people who join that list gets smaller and smaller. That is until we get to the 80s.
And the
explosion of talent. And you've got Magic, Larry, Kareem, Moses Moe, Michael Jordan.
Kareem would you leave in the 70s? But
no, well, you don't actually have to, because he dominated enough in enough of the 80s, even if it was 2 years. And I'm going to come to this point, so just pause me on that. Then you got the 80s, and then you got the 90s. So the picture I'm trying to paint here is every 10 years or so, people join. The pool gets smaller, but people join that. But then you have your legacy players who stay in the top 10. So Miken was in the top 10 for probably 30 years, but then he was evolved out. And it was actually really interesting for me to go into this because it reinforced a couple of things. Number one, Wilt and Bill Russell have been in the top 10 list
since the 60s.
And hasn't been kicked out, which is insane.
And there's no argument to kick either of them out either.
It's just insane given that over 4,000 players joined the league since them. Insane. So that was really revelation for me. And then you have Kareem. So then you go on down the list, and basically what I found was 3 players only were dominated in 2 eras. Who are they?
Kareem, MJ, LeBron.
It's no coincidence that the top 3 guys dominated 2 eras.
And that's the That's usually the first 3 people.
Yeah, and that's exactly. Then, so I put them in the GOAT tier.
Right.
Then I've got my A tier of Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Magic and Larry.
And
then you've got, hang on, pause. So those top 7, Kareem, MJ, Bron, Wilt, Bill, Magic and Larry, those are the 7 locks that I've got. No one can have them outside of their top 10. Nobody. They're in there somewhere. Now, the B tier, this is where it gets interesting. This is where you've got George Mikan, Big O, Julius, Hakeem, Dirk, Tim Duncan, Kobe, Steph Curry, KD. So these people are now in your B tier, and these are the people that we see most people swap in and out for such and such and such. So what we have is a total of 18 names. We have 18 players in the last 75 years who are routinely in that GOAT
in the
discussion. No one else outside of that really makes a top 10 chat. Outside of those names there, some people might have an off chance, but if you ask most people, most fans will tell you those are the 18 names that people will generally pick from, right? Now, hang on.
I've just twigged.
Jerry West is maybe in there as well, but...
Yeah, how you going to hate Jerry?
Now, you've got 4,706 players to have ever played in the NBA and only 18 in the GOAT conversation as of today, right now. And what I've found is somebody joins the GOAT conversation once every 5 years. So once every 5 years, someone joins the discussion. That doesn't mean they're the GOAT.
I was going to say, the math on it checks out. So you've got 18 players over 75 seasons. It's roughly once every 4 or 5 years.
Once every 5 years. And there is a little bit of, it's difficult to but that doesn't, like, you think, okay, so in the next 5 years, but the reason I asked this question is because, as you know, I'm into collecting sports cards, right? And you can either collect emotionally or you can collect for a financial investment. Every year, there's 60 rookies drafted, right? So 60 rookies are drafted every year. So in theory, from a sports card perspective, there's 60 chances at
getting one of those
players. Well, there's 60 chances of getting a top pick, right? Or 1 chance in 60 of getting like the top pick in the draft. But I was thinking from an investment perspective, well, I don't want just a top player in the draft. I want a GOAT.
Who's going to be in the GOAT?
I want someone who's going to be the GOAT. But for that to happen, I want to know what my odds are that in any given year, one of these rookies is going to be the GOAT. And if someone joins every 5 years, I've got a 1 in 300 chance at getting someone who's in the GOAT conversation. And that just blew my mind because because when it comes to card collecting, right, you think, well, number 1 pick, I think there's like a 70% chance your number 1 pick goes on to be an all-star, so it's a pretty good chance they're going to be a good player, but are they going to be in that GOAT conversation? So there's a 1 in 300 chance that over a 5-year stretch, that's only a 5-year stretch, if I pick rookie, if I'm trying to pick a rookie from 5 different rookie classes, I've got a 1 in 300 chance over that 5 years of getting someone who's eventually going to be in the GOAT conversation. So the math sucks. The math is really bad. But it was just super interesting for me to understand just how often someone enters that chat. One every phrase. Now, the next question I'm going to ask is, we're probably seeing the bones of the next player to add to the conversation. Probably 2 in my head, actually. There's 2 players who are probably going to start entering that conversation. Do you know who I'm thinking of?